The Benicia City Council is called back to order.
So I'll be brief. The Second Amendment isn't perfect, but I was reminded by several constituents of Voltaire's famous axiom, and that is, I wrote it down because I wanted to get this right, because it's very important, and that's to not let the perfect be the enemy of good. And so this amendment is good enough for me, and I will be voting yes on this. This is good because, as I've gathered, the two primary parties involved, the steering committee as well as Valero, are good with it. They want it resolved so the community can move forward.
So I understand we have a request for the organized support for this from the Good Neighbor Steering Committee. Are we going to start with that? Or Ms. Dean, did you want to start off? Valero is going to start.
Great, and I'm going to try to focus my remarks on some of these air monitoring questions that have to do with the fence line monitoring. So with that, thank you all for the opportunity to talk to y'all tonight. My name's Elizabeth Bourbon. I'm an attorney with Valero, and I'm here on behalf of the Benicia Refinery to express our support for this agreement. I think we all agree that this has been a long time in coming, and I think a lot has been accomplished under this agreement. This has gone on for a long time, and I think a lot of good has been done. Valero spent well over $10 million in fulfilling various commitments under this agreement. Basically, we've supported water conservation, sustainability, air monitoring, and a lot of other specific projects, probably too many to list right now. I think we should acknowledge that a lot of people have spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on this agreement. But it's time to bring this thing to a close, I think. And so while we have not always seen eye to eye with every point raised by the city or the good neighbors under the agreement, I am delighted that we have been able to reach an agreement to kind of bring resolution to all of this. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of what we've agreed to do as part of this. I don't know if y'all have available a copy of this, the fence line monitoring diagram. So basically, with the Second Amendment to the Good Neighbor Steering Committee agreement, Valero is committing to expanding the Northwest fence line monitoring program. It's in a little bit of a light color, but if you can see to the northwest side, this expands what is currently a state-of-the-art program that's already up and running. It's been up and running since the fall along this west and southwest and eastern portions of the refinery. We're now expanding it to the northwest, which is something that I think the City Council had previously expressed great interest in. And the idea is basically to roll this into the same program with our Bay Area approved monitoring programs that are already up and running. So as far as the type of equipment that's used, the constituents that are monitored for, the way that the data is uploaded to the website, this will all be the same. And one of the things that we've agreed to do is to keep the system running for as long as we have the Bay Area approved system in place. So I think that will provide the kind of duration that you're looking for, because that program, I don't believe, is going anywhere. I think it'll be in place for a long time. And in fact, I think it's sort of setting the model for what we're going to see across the country. We've agreed to spend, well, we anticipate it's going to take at least $1.5 million for this expansion. This is a significant commitment, both because we have to order the additional equipment, but also because the terrain in this area is fairly challenging. We're going to have to extend utilities out. And so we think that this is going to be quite an undertaking, but we understand that it satisfies what the community wants, and we're willing to do it. So we think the time has come to make this commitment. I do want to point out, too, that this is in addition to some extensive other monitoring that's already taking place. We've got over 100 continuous emissions monitors that are on specific pieces of equipment at the refinery already. Our federal fence line monitoring program is getting up and running. And, excuse me. And we've also recently donated some portable monitoring equipment to the fire department so they can go out, periodically to respond to whatever needs may arise. So between all of these things, Benicia is probably one of the most well-monitored communities in the nation, maybe in the world. So we think even aside from all the discussion about the community air monitoring programs, there is quite a bit of data available to support the air quality. So in addition to that, though, we are donating the equipment that was used, that was purchased as part of the original Good Neighbor agreement. I think we spent approximately $250,000 on that. That will be donated for use in the community air monitoring program. So that will relieve some of the funding needs on that program. In addition to that, we're paying $1.5 million for various projects, and including the $440,000 that I believe is supposed to support the community air monitoring program. So we're optimistic this will bring closure and certainty, and that this will allow us all to kind of have done with this in a way that allows us all to move forward in a positive direction. So I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks.
I'm Kathy Carriage. I'm a member of the Good Neighbor Steering Committee for many years. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We have 5 speakers. Each will be covering a different aspect of the settlement agreement. We have a planned reserve of time for questions at the end after everyone has spoken. The genesis of the agreement before you was the 2003 settlement agreement between Valero and the city to settle the concerns of the Good Neighbor Steering Committee and other community groups regarding environmental impacts of the refinery expansion project and related Planning Commission appeal of the Valero Improvement Project. Valero committed to a series of environmental benefits, including putting a scrubber on the main stack, spending up to $15 million for a wastewater reuse project, and air monitoring. In 2008, to settle another dispute between Valero and the Good Neighbor Steering Committee over amendments to the Valero Improvement Project, the Valero Good Neighbor Steering Committee settlement agreement was made. That included reallocating the original money for water reuse. This included $10 million for water conservation and $2 million for buffer land and watershed protection, as well as funding for air monitoring and greenhouse gas reduction. In 2010, this agreement was amended again by the GNSC, Valero, and the city to provide for clarity and better use of the $10 million for water conservation funding. $2.85 million went to the new community center, $1 million for school district, $2.2 million for water conservation at the refinery, and the remainder for projects designated in the agreement and future projects funded by the Sustainability Commission. Our attorney waived $150,000 in fees, and those funds were used for other community projects. The $2 million for buffer land and watershed remain untouched. That brings us to the current agreement. For years, there's been a dispute over whether the $1 million for buffer land was spent. The watershed protection money had not been spent since the 2008 agreement. The current agreement, reached after years of negotiation between the parties, reallocates that money to other projects that directly and immediately benefit the community. It's also very significant that this agreement provides funding up to $3 million. That's $1 million more than was otherwise available to the community and the city. The settlement funds can now be used for community air monitoring and reporting, additional fence line monitors, an integrated water management plan, money for water conservation projects, and for environmental projects with Sustainable Solano. All these projects the next speakers will address, and they all tie to the original environmental impacts of the refinery expansion project. If the agreement isn't approved now, none of these projects will go forward.
Good evening, Council. I'm speaking to you as a founding member of the Good Neighbor Steering Committee since the year 2000. The 2008 settlement agreement provided for establishing an independent community air monitoring station. This agreement funds the Benicia Community Air Monitoring Program, a project envisioned by the GNSC over a decade ago for the sake of public education, health, and safety. The purpose of the monitoring system is to help the public learn about what's in our ambient air in real time from all sources and about the acute and chronic health effects of toxic air pollutants detected. Major sources of air pollution include refineries, vehicle traffic, and other contributors, which you know include fires. The various monitors assembled would sample air at 5-minute intervals and report raw data collected to a user-friendly public access website. The website would also present information about health risks associated to exposure to specific toxic air contaminants. In 2009, in Benicia, the Air District, in cooperation with Valero, Argos Scientific, and the Good Neighbor Steering Committee, conducted a year-long monitoring experiment to demonstrate the capabilities of monitoring and the usefulness generally of having a local community-based air monitoring station. In 2010, Valero contracted Argos for a 2-year period to purchase, assemble, maintain, and operate an array of state-of-the-art monitors. A trailer was purchased to house the equipment, including meteorological instruments for measuring temperature, wind speed, and direction. The settlement agreement did not stipulate who would own the equipment. Both Valero and the city declined ownership in 2013. The ownership question remained unresolved. Since 2013, Valero has securely stored the trailer with monitoring equipment behind their eastern headquarters building. Now, with the funding for the Benicia Community Air Monitoring Program, a new Benicia-based nonprofit organization will be created to hold and operate the original monitoring equipment for the community's benefit. Funding will allow for upgrades to current equipment, new equipment purchases, and years of continuous operation by an independent expert air monitoring company. The nonprofit status and substantial investment from this agreement will allow the organization to seek sustaining grants and other funding in years ahead. Thank you.
I'm Constance Butel, a 10-year member of the Good Neighbor Steering Committee. It's very important to look at the comprehensive nature of the air monitoring components we have negotiated in the 2019 agreement. As a quick reminder, they are fence line monitoring at an otherwise unprotected location, the Benicia monitoring system that Marilyn has just spoken about, and AirWatch Bay Area. AirWatch Bay Area is a community-engaged project that has brought together groups from Richmond, Crockett, Rodeo, Benicia, and Vallejo. Oversight for this project has been led by Dr. Gwen Ottinger of the Fairtech Collective of Drexel University in collaboration with Carnegie Mellon. For the first time ever, AirWatch Bay Area has uniquely provided a publicly accessible big picture air quality view of the entire North Bay via the website airwatchbayarea.org. The website currently incorporates not only real-time refinery and community monitors from Richmond, Crockett, and Rodeo, but also many citizen-purchased Purple Air particulate matter 2.5 monitors. With this funding, Benicia's data will be added to the system. This valuable service maintains historic monitoring data, allowing for air quality trend analysis and other benefits. Funding AirWatch Bay Area will allow this important project to continue and directly increase monitoring value to the city of Benicia, its residents, and while providing benefits to the entire Bay Area. Thank you.
My name is Mary Frances Kelly Poe, and I am also one of the founding members of the GNSC. I will outline in the following comments what an integrated water management plan is and does. First, I would like to thank the staff for including the definition of the integrated water management plan in the staff report. According to the American Planning Association, an integrated water management program focuses on the water cycle as a single connected system and promotes coordinated development and management of water, land, and related resources to maximize the economic and social benefits while minimizing impacts on the environment. A city's water management plan is therefore three-pronged to address water, the source, land requirements, and wastewater treatment. The first part is water. The watershed. Benicia does not have its own water source and must contract for water from the California Water Project. Our watershed is the Sierra. We have had prolonged droughts before, and we will have them again. It is the responsibility of the city to provide water to people and businesses. A water management plan could help us plan ahead for the next crisis. The second part is land. Sufficient land is needed to allow runoff to be purified of pollution before it enters the Carquinez Strait. The marsh is vitally important because it acts as the kidneys of the water system. We have to plan how to augment and protect the marsh, especially with rising tides from climate change. The third part, which is other resources, is the wastewater treatment. Flooding from seasonal rains can overwhelm our wastewater treatment plant. If we can keep this from occurring and also lessen the amount of sewage going to the plant on an ongoing basis, it is possible to stabilize our sewer bills. This is an economic and social benefit. This agreement includes funds for the city to hire a consultant to develop a plan to stabilize Benicia's water. The agreement also provides funds necessary to implement initial projects, the low-hanging fruit, in order to bring direct benefits to the public in short order. This plan would account for water-saving impacts achieved in the community, such as Sustainable Solano's water-wise landscaping project for individual homeowners and public spaces. The integrated water management plan would coordinate the city's various responsibilities for water, pollution prevention, and wastewater treatment. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, Elena Carolina, Executive Director of Sustainable Solana. This year marks Sustainable Solana 20th anniversary. Looking back, we cherish our Benicia roots. In 1999, Dr. Ed Swenson envisioned creating a community garden at the property of Heritage Presbyterian Church. The garden's still growing, and the organization became Benicia Community Gardens. In 2010, second community garden came to the main street, thanks to a generous one-time gift. In 2012, looking to strengthen our local food security, we introduced What's for Dinner educational program, followed by community-supported agriculture. This program still goes on in Benicia. In 2014, with a grant from Benicia Sustainability Commission, we brought a principle of permaculture and secondary water to our private backyards. The program, Benicia Sustainable Backyard, created 7 demonstration gardens with hundreds of people educated, and the cumulative water effect, positive water effect, is 500,000 gallons a year, every year. In 2016, Benicia Community Gardens became Sustainable Solana, with the first and only grassroots nonprofit in the county, with an intent to scale up the projects we successfully implemented and piloted in Benicia. Recognizing the water impact and public education possibility, Solana County Water Agency asked us to scale up that program to the county. Now we have 18 gardens with cumulative water effect 1.1 million every year, and thousands of people educated. Our tiny community-supported agriculture in Benicia informed a county-wide local food system planning project funded by the United States Department of Agriculture. Now, through this funding, we are looking forward in planting another seed in Benicia, an education and certification program for young people, where our backyards and public spaces can serve as a training room without the walls. It will build the capacity of the organization, provide workforce in the community, will provide the workforce development and job training, while in the process, changing our landscapes to be more sustainable. Every gift we received, keep giving. We are looking forward to celebrate the organization's strength and capacity that did grow in Benicia through these 20 years of service. Thank you.
Good evening. Dana Dean. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of the Good Neighbor Steering Committee tonight. Just to sum up what you've heard, there are a few major points that I want to touch on. First, this agreement was actually 6 years in the making. I went back and looked, and we started the conversation on making the adjustments to the $2 million in 2012. Went in fits and starts. We did have meetings with various parties for a while. Secondly, and I think most significantly, this resolves a lingering $1.9 million dispute between the parties that would otherwise have been left on the city's plate to either enforce against Valero or continue to let languish without a productive use for the community. The agreement requires Valero to invest up to $1 million more. Actually, it's 1.1 or 2, depending on your interpretation, $1 million more than they would otherwise have been required to if the city actually ever required them to spend the money. The big numbers are approximately $2 million for a slate of air monitoring programs, $450,000 for water management, $440,000 for community-led environmental programs. I'm going to mention that I believe you're going to hear from a number of folks in the audience tonight who might raise their hands if they're supportive of the Sustainable Solano programs. I'd appreciate it, and they'll want to speak. And finally, if I could have 10 more seconds, I want to mention that these are all things that relate back to the original environmental impacts of the project, and they all support Good Neighbors' well-stated, oft-stated purpose of funding projects that have a ripple effect. They fund a particular project.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Are
you
there
for-
any
Thank
questions?
you for all your time.
Brief question, and then we'll have public comment.
Here, now, okay, again, $460,000, say you're wrong. You say, well, do a nonprofit and everything. But, maybe you get a grant, maybe you don't get a grant. There's no guarantees on things like that. So, if you're wrong, are you willing to take some of the money away from the other two projects to make it whole and finish it up?
So we see it differently. What I see is $1.9 million alleged and possible that was going to be used for some fantastic idea of a buffer zone. It was my idea, so I can say it was fantasy. And also for very valid but not really available watershed. That money is sitting there. It's been sitting there for a decade. And what we're doing is we have spent 6 years working tirelessly to distribute these funds in a way that is best suited for the whole community. You are getting $2 million worth of air monitoring, which you are not otherwise entitled to. That's a lot. And at the same time, all of the things that the people have worked so hard on for years, these ladies right here, dedicated their life to, which also address issues related to the expansion project, are being funded. We absolutely 1,000% stand behind the distribution, and we will do whatever it takes to pursue long-term, decades, because decades are going by, of other funding for these things. But the value of one does not make the others not valuable. We believe absolutely in the numbers that we have before you, and we stand behind them. We are not changing them.
Okay, I want to ask the group the same question I asked Ms. Burden from Valero. Would you consider, if there has been expressed council interest in moving some money about, would you consider council and renegotiating with Valero and the city?
On the count of 3.
This,
1,
2, 3, no.
Andy Zinkevich, 366 East 2nd Street.
Okay.
And I'm speaking in favor of the amendment of being adopted as is, based on my understanding that it's been a very long time that this has been going through, and that the group that's been considering it is very dedicated not only to it being the right way to go, but also in making sure that it's going to be the right way going forward.
I'm Dan Morgan, 771 West I Street. When I came here in maybe 1985, I never thought about air monitoring as being something that I was worried about. It seemed like all the bad stuff was blowing out toward Antioch. But now we know, even this year maybe, everybody was wearing air masks. Southampton, right? So it seems like this is a function that government should start to have. I think that we should be monitoring the air. I don't think we should be nickel and diming it at this point. I think it'd be a good start. accepting this plan, and then moving forward, it should be something that the city should continue to do and take responsibility for, so we don't have to have these type of agreements to keep it.
Hi, I'm Pato Smith, and as you know, I'm very, very concerned and have been wanting air monitors for at least 10 years. I personally believe and trust in everything the Good Neighbor Steering Committee says about monitoring, and I agree with what they're proposing. I'm very happy that we'll finally be getting community monitors, so we'll not only know what the PM levels are, but we'll know what the individual chemicals that we're breathing is. This should happen now, and the proposal should be adopted. These women have worked so hard. I want to give them a hand. I'm sorry that I'm disrupting, because they all have worked incredibly hard over many, many years, and I trust them implicitly. And so I think you guys should go forward with this. Thank you.
I just want to say that I am obviously for the air monitors. I'm glad that it was brought up, the American Lung Association's rating for Benicia. I've been concerned for a long time also. I went to my doctor, and because I was having all these allergies and upper respiratory issues that I'd never had before, and my doctor said confidentially, it's environmental pollution.
So we have this frustration of some members of the council that this is take it or leave it. And as Councilmember Largaspada said, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that's kind of where we need to come back. And so we've heard very clearly that if we don't agree to this agreement tonight, that there is no agreement and there isn't a willingness to bring all the parties together and renegotiate. I believe that's what I heard. The issues that cause, so that's one thing, that's a feeling that you have. But if we can kind of take a deep breath and do some mindfulness, we can get to the hopefulness of this agreement. And so I just want to be clear that I will support what's before us, and I'm trying to understand all the frustration about it, and I think I do. More important to me is to move forward and do what has been promised for a very long time, and this is a path forward.
I'll make a motion to approve this item.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Campbell,
Yes.
Largaspada. Yes. Strawbridge.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
And Mayor Patterson.
Yes. Hallelujah.